Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can analyze the situation with the Frenemies podcast, including the behavior of Trisha Paytas, Ethan Klein, and Dr. Drew Pinsky. Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I'll put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. Before I get into this situation, I have received a few messages. People have noticed that the dog in one of the Frenemies episodes looks a lot like my multi-poo, Bella. I will touch on this at the very end of the video because there's nothing scientific about Bella. I'll start with a quick background of the key players, move to a description of what happened across these various videos, and then I'll offer my analysis. The three key players here would be Trisha Paytas, Ethan Klein, and Dr. Pinsky. Trisha Paytas is a popular YouTube content creator with about 5 million subscribers. She is kind of an anti-hero who is known for having a flair for the dramatic. There are various theories about how she has difficulty regulating her emotions. She claims to have borderline personality disorder. Ethan Klein operates a podcast called Frenemies, which features Paytas. The videos are released on a YouTube channel called H3 Podcast, which has over 2 million subscribers. Klein also has another channel with over 6 million subscribers. Drew Pinsky goes by the name Dr. Drew. He is a physician who is active in media production. On his website, he refers to himself as an unprecedented reservoir of expertise. The website also states that he has been regarded as a beacon of truth, integrity, fairness, and common sense. So I'm going to guess that low self-esteem is not one of his problems. Pinsky has been involved in a number of controversies that are beyond the scope of this video. Perhaps I can record a separate video just about him. But just to offer one example, he claimed that the coronavirus was not as dangerous as the flu, suggesting that there was a press-induced panic. As it turns out, we know he was incorrect. Therefore, this seems to be a case of Pinsky-induced nonsensical thinking. On December 10, 2020, the H3 podcast released a video titled Trisha Quits the Podcast and Storms Out, a title which accurately described what happened in the video. Over the next few days, we see several additional videos are made, culminating in another Frenemies podcast featuring Paytas, Klein, and Pinsky. So now moving back to the storming out video. Paytas and Klein got into an argument after Klein mentioned that his wife did not want to be the topic of conversation on the podcast. As I understand it, Paytas is romantically involved with a man named Moses, who is Klein's wife's brother. The relationship between all these people was at issue. Paytas had made comments that allegedly put a strain on those relationships. Paytas started getting angry, indignant, and using expletives. She felt as though Klein's wife was taking a position that she was too good to be talked about on the show. Klein said he did not know what to do because Paytas was having a moment. He did appear to be genuinely confused, but then he proceeds to keep the dialogue going, clearly straying into a volatile area. Eventually, he makes a better effort to pivot away from the topic, but Paytas brought up Klein's use of a nanny. Later, Paytas refers to this as a jab. Klein then starts provoking the situation even though Paytas signals that she wants to move on. Paytas accuses Klein of making light of the fact that she doesn't have children. Klein then decides that he wants to move on, and Paytas continues with inflammatory comments. Just then Moses, again this is somebody that Paytas is romantically involved with, comes into the room with a pizza. I guess they had ordered it before, and Paytas offers a summary of what happened. Paytas eventually storms out as she continues her creative use of expletives. As if that video wasn't painful enough to watch, Paytas decided to release another video titled Why I Quit Frenemies, in an effort to punish her audience for another 46 minutes. In this video, she said that her behavior was horrible and she had instant regret. There's this trigger in her mind that was activated. This is something she struggles with. She was trying to control it, but could not. She does not like promoting drama for the sake of the show, but she enjoys the adversarial relationship with Klein. However, she said she did not like how Klein pushes her for a reaction. Paytas said that she has worked hard to improve her mental health. She needs to recognize triggers. She said medication will not help her. She mentioned attempts in this video as well. She said that she blacked out during the anger episode. She didn't remember what happened. She went home and cried hysterically. She was also embarrassed and angry at herself. This narrative, especially when taken with some of the statements made in other related videos, is a little bit confusing, or I guess one could say more confusing than the usual Paytas narrative. It's not clear how Paytas wants to be viewed. She said that she knows that people want to see silly drama. She understands that. But at the same time, she seems upset that people might think that that's who she really is. There seems to be a battle here between who she is as a person and her persona, which I've talked about before in reference to Paytas. Paytas then went on to talk about how one mental health professional that she works with thought she had paranoid schizophrenia. This is an older classification. The disorder is simply referred to as schizophrenia now. The disorder is characterized by hallucinations, delusions, negative symptoms like a lack of emotional expression, and disorganized speech and behavior. I don't know if Paytas has schizophrenia or not. I do know that BPD is sometimes characterized by what is referred to as quasi-psychotic thoughts, something like what we see with schizotypal personality disorder. So BPD can be confused a little bit with schizophrenia. Paytas apologized to Klein's wife. However, there was this live stream that Klein and his wife were on later, and apparently this provoked Paytas. Paytas again feels compelled to respond with a video. It looks like she recorded this one in her car. In this video, she appeared angry. She said that she was really done. She was blocking the phone numbers of Klein and his wife, and she would not appear on an episode that was planned for the next week, which would feature Dr. Drew Pinsky. Paytas did actually make one good point in this video. She wondered why Klein kept talking about the drama if he really wanted the drama to end. Just when I thought it was safe, Paytas released another video. This one was an hour and 10 minutes long. Many of her videos are like a stream of consciousness. To say that they appear unplanned is a bit of an understatement. This one was bad even by those standards. Trying to summarize this video is like trying to summarize a bunch of random words. The summary is that they are random words. She talks about how people advocate for mental health until they see it. This whole mess was exposing the ugly side of mental health. She did not want to be a troll on the internet. She said that I have freedom because I'm just me and people expect so little. That was really one of my favorite lines. Paytas did not want to be that girl with borderline. She talked about how when she gets angry, she blacks out, like something else is in control. This brings me to the next Frenemies episode, which was released on December 16, 2020. Even though Paytas said that she was done, she was on this episode along with Klein, Dr. Pinsky, and one of his colleagues. This episode was over 2 hours long. Near the beginning, Klein said that people think we are faking it, referencing all the drama that occurred. Pinsky said that each of the blow-ups helped the pair manage their relationships better, demonstrating, in my opinion, a poor understanding of relational dynamics. This type of drama is almost always harmful. Paytas and Klein tried to offer a recap of what happened on the prior episode. I guess Pinsky didn't even bother watching it, although I can appreciate his position in this regard. That may have been the smartest thing he did throughout this whole mess. During the recap, we get a good look at how there are communication problems between the pair. They can't even agree on what happened, even though it was literally on video. Pinsky then brings up the concept of splitting, which he described inaccurately. Splitting, in the context of borderline personality disorder and defense mechanisms, is when a person tends to see an object, usually a person, as all good or all bad. The way this expresses in borderline is referred to as idealization and devaluation. Someone with this disorder will love somebody one moment and hate them the next moment. There is no gray area. We don't see a continuum. Rather, we see dichotomous thinking. Pinsky then makes it seem like Klein should not have responded to the splitting. Again, he described splitting wrong, so it gets confusing. I take it to mean Pinsky believed Klein's behavior exacerbated the anger episode of Paytas. Now, I do think that Klein antagonized Paytas in the storming out episode, but the way that Pinsky framed this really shifts the blame over to Klein. It made it seem like Klein should just retreat whenever Paytas gets frustrated, loud, obnoxious, and insulting, otherwise known as 90% of the time she's talking. Here's another area where Pinsky doesn't seem to understand cluster B personality pathology, which I guess makes sense because he's a physician and not a mental health counselor. Either way, he is acting like he knows what he's talking about on this topic, even though the evidence supports the opposite conclusion. What Paytas did here was boundary crossing, which is extremely common with BPD. When boundaries are crossed by a person with BPD, the other person needs to maintain their own boundaries. Giving in to the boundary crossing, retreating, is not going to make things better. It will not change the course of the disorder. It will not improve the relationship. It is often better to resist the attempt at manipulation, to show that you're willing to stand up for reason and common sense, rather than walking on eggshells. When somebody does retreat, this is called the rolling over and playing dead strategy of dealing with cluster B personality pathology. Some people justify it by saying it works for possums. But actually, possums don't play dead. When possums appear to be playing dead, they have actually entered a catatonic state in response to fear. This is referred to as tonic immobility. It is involuntary. Even though it might be tempting to imitate a catatonic state in response to Paytas, it's probably not a good idea. I agree that Klein should not have antagonized Paytas, but that's something different than standing up for rational thinking. Pinsky was surprised that Paytas was embarrassed about her behavior. If she actually has BPD, then this wouldn't be surprising at all. It would actually be expected. Individuals with this disorder are often embarrassed after an outburst. After this misinformation session by Pinsky, we find out that Paytas and Klein took 2 tests, the Narcissistic Personality Inventory and a test that measures the dark triad traits, which are narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. These instruments focus on a narrow segment of personality theory. I wouldn't necessarily expect somebody with BPD to have dramatically elevated psychopathy or Machiavellianism. However, there is a type of narcissism called vulnerable narcissism, which does have some overlap with BPD. So really, these 2 assessments would not be expected to reveal much about the situation. And when we look at the results, we see that they don't. Paytas was using substances when she took the assessments, so the results are invalid, and Klein had low scores. Pinsky makes 3 statements about these constructs that I want to critique. Number 1, he said that sociopaths were attracted to people with BPD. This is correct. Pinsky didn't know the reason why this happens. In part, it is due to the fact that people with BPD are often promiscuous, and sociopaths are sensation-seeking. Additionally, the dramatic component of BPD doesn't bother sociopaths as much because they have a lack of empathy. They are resistant to the type of manipulation associated with BPD. Number 2, he said that sociopaths can understand how others feel, which they use to manipulate others, while psychopaths feel nothing. This isn't quite right. Both sociopaths and psychopaths are manipulative. In reality, sociopaths are more emotionally reactive, and psychopaths are more manipulative. Number 3, Pinsky said that we want naval aviators who land on carriers to be narcissistic. No, we don't. We want them to be psychopathic. They don't need to be arrogant, condescending, and envious to land an aircraft. They need to be calm under pressure. The portion of Pinsky wraps up with him saying that Paytas and Klein are in a more connected place. Based on what is observable, I find that statement naive. Now, stepping back and taking a look at this whole situation, I think there's something qualitatively different about people producing videos that contain drama, and the same thing happening when it involves mental disorders. For example, if somebody was going to record a video of a person drinking alcohol, there's a difference between featuring that behavior with somebody who's not addicted to alcohol and using someone who is. Even still, there's no clear picture about what should be done in the situation. On one hand, I can appreciate the argument that Paytas should focus more on her recovery and distance herself from the drama. On the other hand, even though BPD does tend to improve with age, it is still somewhat stable over the lifespan. So why shouldn't Paytas be allowed to simply live her life? If that involves recording videos featuring her symptoms, that is her prerogative. As much as some of her videos bother me, mostly due to the disorganization, the content, the length, the poor planning, really too much to list here. She does make some good points. She has focused a light on the topic of mental health and public figures. What happens if a YouTube content creator has a mental disorder? What if some of those symptoms can be used to generate views? This whole mess with frenemies and all the related stuff after it, I think actually casts Paytas as a more sympathetic character, someone struggling with their own identity and symptom management. Those are my thoughts on this whole frenemies situation. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis on this topic to be interesting. Thanks for watching. So I just wanted to feature Belle the dog. She does look a lot like the dog from that frenemies episode. This is why it's not a good idea to work with pets on video. So a lot of people again pointed that out and they said, hey, that dog looks a lot like that other dog. She is a multi-poo. I assume that other dog, I think his name was Fred, was a multi-poo as well. So she's a good companion. She stays with me when I'm researching videos, preparing the outlines, all the work through production and post-production. I'm not sure she really likes the camera too much, but she does stay with me. She's a good companion. So it's always a good idea when you're making videos to have dogs around. That's the lesson learned from this whole section of the video. So again, just wanted to feature Bella. As always, thanks for watching.